A lot of you are thinking about moving to Grenada. It's a gorgeous Caribbean island where the living can be really beautiful. But as beautiful as the island is, understanding how you're going to sustain yourself, how you're going to live off the land, perhaps, are conversations that I think are worth having. And so today I'm joined by Marcus Andall, who is a fabulous young organic farmer. Good morning, Marcus. How are you?
Blessed day, Zozo. I am well today. I am well. Today is Sunday, so it's a good day.
And so I've been to your place a few times, and the worst thing about it is that I never want to leave when I go because it's just so tranquil and cool and abundant. And I have a few
That's
people who are
true.
actually looking to move to Grenada who want to grow their own food. And I think the
Right.
area that you're in, because it's higher and cooler and just so lush, is one of the areas that I often recommend. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I mean, when it comes to growing food, I think Birch Grove at one point in time it was a breadbasket of Grenada, right? It supplied like it was from fruits to vegetables. I think it has a nice variety of ecosystems, right? From the rainforest and then kind of have like a lowland. So I think it allows a lot of different, different type of plants to grow and really flourish here. So yeah, I it's interesting because I think just my farming journey started in townside in a more heated place. That's St. David's Confer side, Calviny. Yeah, and yeah, it's great to actually see my transition from farming in such higher temperature to being a cooler zone now, and just seeing how the plants growing and how they develop, and it has been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, I love it. And so for people watching in the UK or the US or Canada or wherever who are thinking about moving to Grenada or moving to the Caribbean, what do you think they often misunderstand about food?
My first thing I think I'll say is I think is the access to food. I think because even though we import a lot of food, there's still access to a lot of native foods. I would say on the island. I think for them that is like a kind of wow factor. But and also too, they knowing that, then wondering how are we importing so much, how our import bill is so high when we have so much abundance here. I think that in itself, even for me, sometimes try to wrap my head around that, it kind of makes no sense. But yeah, that is something that I think it's an easy solve problem. I think from a farming perspective, I in the business world we are taught to make profit, right? And I think in that journey of making profit, people feel like, all right, you have to figure out ways to make like bring in the money. When I think if you break down your expenses, you see the money, right? So I think investing more in agriculture, it would break down that heavy cost, so we'll actually be buffered from this high cost of living if we control our import rate by growing more food. You know what I
Got it,
mean?
got it. And also, I forgot, I should have remembered this, but you're in an interesting position because not only are you a farmer, your father is a significant person on the island when it comes to food and retail of food. Do you want to tell
Yes.
us a little bit about your dad and also how the insights that you've had growing up have shaped the way in which you farm and the way in which you see agriculture?
Um, So my dad, Peter Andall, he is, I think, one of from in my era of growing up, one of the most successful businessmen I have experienced and seen. Not just because he's my dad, but because I think what he is able to generate and the business he is able to procure here on the island. Um, he runs a supermarket chain. He has about three now, one in Grenville, one in two in town, one in Carnage, one in St. Paul's. And he has, over my lifetime, I've seen him open supermarkets, restaurants, hardwares here on the island, and all successful. Um, in his last years in business, I think he would have traversed back to agricultural land, and that was about 15 years ago. And what he with this, he was basically supporting his business because supermarkets, restaurants, growing your own food. I think to support business like that is an ingenious move. So that is where he's at right now. And, that's how I learned farming through, working with him and seeing, you know, understanding through that frame how farming is within everything. Because prior to that, I was not into farming. So see my dad, this bit man who runs 20 million businesses, decided, listen, I'm going into the land. And then seeing how he also showed me that agriculture is not just sticking something in the ground. I mean, agriculture is there's a lot of logistics behind agriculture. There's a lot of discipline within that framework. Also, to if done right, there's a lot of money in agriculture as well, right? And yeah, from him, he's very creative in his way of developing his businesses. He also has vision and see things from not just one perspective but many perspectives to make a decision. So I experienced all this with him, and I've incorporated a lot of that within how I think. I feel like he's very creative, and I think that this is something I took from him as well too. So I think just in figuring out, all right, what is what does the business need, at the point, and how he plugs that in, and I see that as such a solution oriented move. And I mean, I try to think the same way. All right, not just what my business need, but what does my life need, and figure out that and plug it in as well.
Got it, got it. And one of the things I want to share is that you and I are actually cousins, aren't we?
I think
I'm
so.
I'm an Andall too. And it's really
Yeah.
interesting, the family, in that when I go through the land records and look at my great grandfather, the amount of land that this man was buying up, like in a way that I used to buy shoes. And so I think this is something that we really need to reflect on, is that the older generation were really strategic about making sure that their offspring, those who came
Yeah.
after, were able to live sustainably. They
Yes.
weren't spending it at the gambling shop. They weren't spending it in the rum shop. Clearly, the Andals, they were spending it on women, but yet still, they managed to accrue some assets. And I think there
Hmm.
is a real responsibility for our generation to kind of take the lessons from the elders and to be like, okay, 50, 100 years time, what's different for those who come after me because of the
Right.
decisions that I've made. So it's really lovely that the baton has been passed on to you and your father, and that you're really taking it seriously. But I'd love to know for you, like what changed when you began growing food seriously? You said that you weren't always into agriculture. So what was that shift like for you?
At one point in life, I can't exactly give you a pinpoint or this shifted it, but I would say this: at about 25, 26, life gotten a bit dull. And it's just like, because I was in entertainment world prior to agriculture and stuff like that. And I mean, life just kind of felt more repetitive. And, I think I wanted more from my life. And I think, just kind of exploring options, different stuff. I found a documentary called Cowspiracy. And yeah, I'm a person who loved hamburgers, and like I love cheeseburgers. Listen, let's we don't.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to kill, but so yeah, so I found out the water trail of a hamburger of a quarter pound, and how much water was used just to make one burger. And I think when I saw that, that always sat with me. Like to me, I think that was like a serious. That was my trigger, seeing that, observing that information. Because later on that night, I sat in front of my fridge and kind of cleaned it out, my pantry cleaned it out, and I went cold turkey. Within one night, I went from um carnivore to vegan, or no, I would say this more plant based, because
Okay.
even I think vegans consume, from my perspective, still consume a lot of chemicals. So I went more plant based. I went plant based. This was a overnight decision. This wasn't like, all right, boy, let me think. Hmm. It's like my body just like, listen, Marcus, you need to make that shift. And yeah, I made that shift. But I wasn't getting that superhuman boom that I saw a lot of people talking about. And I was like, all right, something is not right. And then somebody advised me to grow my own food. And Zoe, I'm telling you, after a month of growing my own food, or after eating my own food that I've grown, I needed no other no, nothing else to, confirm to me like, all right, Marcus, this is your way forward. Because it I my body automatically felt different. And since then I've been feeling amazing. I can't complain. Grow your own food, eat your own food. It works. I believe heavily in energy and understanding the flow of energy in life. And if I grow something and I'm taking care of this plant with love and care, in return the plant does the same. So I feel like that is also something I apply heavily to, my life and my philosophy of way of living is, just apply love into everything that I do. Because it's energy that is reciprocated once the universe feels it. So in my plants, especially in what I grow quality food for myself. So also that means I grow quality food for people. And with that, it's lots of love, lots of care, lots of energy that goes into it. Because if it's just like growing a baby, you grow your children love with care so that, they could turn to be the best possible, human being. So I grow my plants so that I could get the best fruit, the best vegetables, packed with nutrients, so that, when we eat it, we feel alive as we should.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think you have so much wisdom, which is why you are one of the people that's joining me in a virtual conversation next week for
Right,
folks who are looking to move to that island, but also those who are here already who are wanting a more sustainable way of living. So I hope folks join, and I'll put the link in that below. But as you're talking about like the difference that your food growing has made to you, I'm feeling really, really inspired, and at the same time recognizing that when I go to the supermarket and I see provisions and callaloo, I'm like, I'm not drawn to buy it. I have to be very honest. And I have to
right,
say, as someone coming from the UK, I'm a plant-based vegetarian. But what I realized is in the UK, I didn't really cook. I warmed up food. So there would be, I could buy
mm,
like a salad bag and just put some dressing on it. I could have all the fresh vegetables and fruits that I wanted, and I just like toss it up, or vegetarian burgers that I could just put into the oven.
right,
But here, it feels like there's a lot of cooking from scratch, which I guess is cooking with love, right? You can't just fling something in the
right.
microwave. But in terms of what you grow from your land, what does your the food that you eat actually look like? What is your meals, your snacks, your like so
Man,
people can actually
listen,
envision what you're eating beyond the boiled bananas every day?
right? Um, So I'm a chef as well. So when it comes to my food, I love quality food, so I cook a lot of quality stuff. So let me run you through a day. Let's say I rise. Most times I love cocoa tea. Cocoa tea in the rising is best. And it gives you loads of energy. And as a farmer, I mean, you want to boost them, you want to start the morning with a bang, like that. So yeah, so something like maybe 2 cups of cocoa tea, maybe mid-morning do like a green smoothie. So a green smoothie for me is usually something like frozen bananas, ginger, kale, coconut water, and cucumber, something like that. Maybe like a hemp seed or pumpkin seed if I have, right? So that's the smoothie. Lunch, man. So I think you know this, Zoe. Like I love cooking and I'm very creative in what I do with food. So I mean, yesterday I did a fried plantain wrap.
Okay.
You're right. So you fry plantains, you cut your vegetables up. So what I do, I kind of make a semi salad with the lettuce and the cucumbers and stuff like that. Yeah, fry the plantain. So I grated some sweet potatoes on the big side of the grater, and then I'll saute that down a little bit, right? If you have coconut oil, you can use coconut oil. Or if you have some coconut milk, saute down that a bit, and you put that in the wrap with the fried plantain, with your veggies, a little olive oil, cut it in half, bang. Listen, so that sometimes I do things. I've been doing a lot of soups lately. Um, so I had earlier in this week I had lentil peas soup, and then a lot of my soups I create my own veggie broth and sometimes just have it in the fridge. So when I'm ready for something like a soup, or even things like stews, you kind of have a base, you could work with, right? But yeah, I mean, I do things. When I love breadfruit, so when breadfruit's in season, I do a lot of roast breadfruit bowls. I actually made a breadfruit oil and bowl recently. So when breadfruit comes back in season, that'll be something I'll be exploring heavy. Actually making a roasted breadfruit oil and bowl. Yeah,
Wow.
that was super delicious. Yeah, jerk plantains. Um, I make different type of hummus. I love beet hummus. You know. Yeah. So my food, and I love experimenting. So I do a lot of on the fly cooking, and for me that is beautiful. And I think even for a lot of my clients who just pass for meals, they love that too. When you just kind of come and you're all right, what's for lunch today, and you kind of get surprised or blessed with some kind of amazing meal, something like maybe like a roasted, like I roast some squash, and maybe do a mashed green banana, right? And then put it in the roasted squash, and then maybe use the herbs from my garden with some coconut milk and some sea moss, and make a nice little drip, and drip that on top. And I mean, simple. That's maybe less than half an hour, and it's a amazing, beautiful meal.
My mouth, I'm glad you kept on talking because my mouth is watering so much that I can barely get the words out. And the other thing I think folks don't realize is that not just the meals amazing, but the ingredients. So
Yeah,
last week I was at your place because you're trial running a farm to table experience, and you got me to pick some cucumbers. And
right.
to be able to just pick them and eat them was amazing. And my daughter, who's obsessed with cucumbers, she was saying, "Why are they so green? Why are they so tasty?" So having them full of nutrients, not just packed full of chemicals and fake fertilizers, it really adds a lot to the
Facts,
cooking.
facts.
So
And I'm
yeah.
happy she enjoyed it, man. I'm
Yeah.
really happy that she enjoyed those cucumbers.
No, it's interesting because the regular ones, when you cut them inside, they're white, whereas your ones had more color to it and more of a taste. So you can tell the difference.
Facts, facts. I love to, I love to com- compare, especially with clients. I try to give them that opportunity to compare my produce to, produce they buy daily, or normally from supermarkets and stuff like that. One of my tests I run with tomatoes is I've had people put tomatoes down for 3 months, and it doesn't run water, it doesn't spoil, it sit there on the table and it stays red. It Once it's not damaged on the outside, it stays perfect. And the reason why I do stuff like that is just to show that, listen, this is real food. Um, Real food lasts, but once it's oxygenated, it spoils fast. So I mean, even with my cucumbers, you could take a cucumber, leave it on the table for almost 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and it might dry up a little bit, right? But once it's not damaged on the outside, it stays firm and it stays good. Yeah, but once oxygen gets into it, that's it. It starts running the next life cycle. So plant is the life cycle of the plant. So
Yeah.
once the outside is not damaged, and it's full, it stays in that phase. But once it's damaged, it switch into, all right, time to break down, basically.
Right. And so for people listening who are already sold, they're like, yeah, that's it. I want Marcus's life. Where do I book my ticket? I'm leaving St. George's or I'm leaving the US. I want to come to Grenada. Just so that they understand. Like, what do you think people might underestimate, or what are some of the factors people need to get their heads around when it comes to approaching land growing, like whether it could be things like soil or water or the pests? What are some of the things that you encourage people to think about?
Patience.
Mm.
Forget soil. Forget the land itself per se. Patience. You need to come into the land with patience. The la- I thought I had patience. No. The last 5 years, sorting out my own land, managing it, everything, that's patience. And the land will force you. If you're serious about it, you have no choice. And if you try any other way, yes, you might get progress, but only to a certain extent. You have to have patience in the land. Land. with soil and nature. Nature, it's a process, and that the process is important. It's not about this. It's not about the goal. It's about the journey. um I think two things, yes, two things can be truthful, can be the same. So yes, it's about the journey, but and the goal, but the time and the lessons learned and the knowledge picked up along the way, that's the value. And only with patience you get that. So yeah, when you come to land, patience, because once you have patience, everything else in the land becomes easy, because you have to let the process happen. If you don't and you force the process, you get forced results. And forced results are not what you want. You want results. You want good results. So patience.
Can you give me an example of how that's shown up for you? A lesson where the land taught you patience.
Hmm. Perfect. I love coconut trees. I'm now I I planted 20 coconut trees when I first came here. And now I'm able to walk around and just pick coconuts, not climb trees. For some, that might be it seem like it might be something simple, but I would say this: to have the opportunity to pick a coconut every day and drink. For me, that is heaven, and I had to be patient for to allow that to develop. So this is one way the land taught me, right, Marcus? When you are patient, this is what you get. This is your reward. Um, and so I'm excited to grow more coconut trees, because the idea of I could walk around my land and pick a coconut. Not I don't have to climb. I don't. It's for me again. It's like it's a wow moment for me, because all my life I've been climbing coconut trees or jumping on coconut trees. I don't have to, and all I need to do is continue planting these trees and have patience. And then this is also how you invest in the future, and you invest for your future, where you things like coconut and fruit trees is crucial to replant our native species, especially our native species, to help build back the biodiversity island wide. you know um and that's why I'm here trying to help people build their gardens. This is something at Grenada Ital we're offering going forward from this summer, basically helping people develop their gardens into a space where it is sustainable, but also it grows a certain amount of food that could be provided for that household, and also make it fun. Don't make gardening into this boring situation where again you think gardening is just about, well, let's turn the soil and fog the land. Listen, there you could no-till garden where you don't even have to fog the land. You could build your own soil. You could build your own beds where it's not a situation where you have to take a fork and shove into the land to make it happen. So there are many ways to farm sustainably. Even just growing sweet potatoes in a bag, it's an amazing thing, right? So um, it is not a situation where you it's rocket science for it to happen. And I want people to know that it's not. Farming is simple. It's just, I think the most discipline and patience is what it requires the most. That's what I've gathered from farming. And like I said, there are many things about farming. People watch, like I said, the digging up the soil part. There's eco farming where you have tours. I do farm to tables. I do Ital farm Saturdays, which comes like almost like farm therapy, where you could come and really kind of get your hands in the soil and understand planting a bit more. We're trying to do that every other Saturday, and we're right now they're working on the road coming in by me, so that is something that we haven't really doing much tours since then. But once that is done, our tours will be back up and running. We do nutmeg tours as well, where we break down the nutmeg from the bowl to the stem, like from a scientific and also from a farmer perspective. And then we also bring you so you could use the nutmeg in maybe a meal or usually be a smoothie. And so yeah, so we understand that the land, you could access it, things different ways from the land, not just, all right, boy, let me come and fuck up the land, you know what I mean, and walk the land. Sometimes resting in the land is important too. And that's a heavy way of grounding. Sometimes, a lot of our ancestors slept under the nutmeg trees. Listen, it's there's a reason for that. Nutmeg, it's that spice that also calms your body. So just imagine you're laying on the ground, the roots of this plant is directly on your back, and if you watch the roots of nutmeg, it's almost like a nervous system because it's one of those, yeah, it's those fibrous roots. So it's like, yeah, it's like, if it's crazy. So it's like, think about, you're putting your back on that and you're laying on this, constantly allowing you, and you're falling asleep there for maybe, or having a power nap for 20 minutes. Now this is your body going into almost a sleep state, that kind of automatic sensory, you know and you're grounded. This is not laying on your bed. So I could just imagine, what that did for them, you know what I mean? And it's something, I don't know how many people do it before, but sleeping under a nutmeg tree, or falling asleep under a nutmeg tree, is a thing. And understanding that too, it's beautiful. So yeah, we're fully connected to the land out here, in around our space. And we, like Zoe said, we're organic, so we keep it clean. Um, Chemical free zone, and yeah, we have fun with it.
I was going to ask you about what people should start with, but when you talk about chemical free, I think you would be a good person to get a steer on. With all the conversation that's going on about what's happening in Iran and the drop in fertilizer, etc., is that is that going to affect is that going to affect you in any way? And how do you think it will affect other farmers on the island?
All right, so me, nah, that's not gonna affect me, definitely. I think, as sad as it is, I think that will pressure our farmers, or even pressure us to dive a bit more into imports, because a lot of farmers have been schooled on, all right, but if I don't have fertilizer, this organic thing takes forever, and that's not true. There are a lot of different factors that play into that. One main factor, I think, is education, and of agriculture. We're not educating our farmers on sustainable practices. We're not educating them on how we can farm in a more healthier way, also in a profitable way as well. I This manure is, yes, it speeds up the process of planting, and getting your, but it speeds up every process, every life cycle of the plant. So like I was saying a while ago, how my cucumbers could sit on the table and it will stay there almost forever. um it's the opposite when you have fertilized plants, because they run through the growing cycle, they run through the ripen cycle, and they run through the decaying cycle. So it's every cycle is speed up.
Right.
So sometimes you have tomatoes or peppers and you see they start to run water. That's the chemicals breaking down, because the plant is, all right. The plant is the chemicals is speeding up all the process. So the cells in the plant are saying, all right, we're full now. After we ripe, all right, break down. So everybody is quick ripe, quick breakdown. So that's why it's important, again, patience to grow our own food. Because if you want to grow healthy food, you need to have patience to grow it. And it's a I've seen this impact directly on our health of our nation. Listen, Zoe, 20 years ago, if you ask a kid what was diabetes, listen, there are kids with diabetes now. For that for that to happen within a 20-year process, that's a really fast pace of increase in illnesses on the island. That's so, I mean, for such a small per capita as well. So yeah, so it's we have to figure out how to use what we have, because there are a plethora of um, organic material we could use here, to grow our food and replace the imports of the fertilizers. A simple thing is sargassum. Sargassum is a problem. It's a serious problem. Uh, I drive by these places and sometimes I get the smell of it, especially during the dry season. And I'm like, honestly, how do you stay there? And I mean this with all my heart. It's sad, but also there's a solution. Some scientists in Mexico figure out all you have to do is wash the sargassum and throw it in the sun to take out the heavy metals. Literally, you rinse it thoroughly and you throw it in the sun. And I think we have spaces for this here on the island where we could designate some spaces for washing and sun drying and and throwing this back into the land as fertilizers. We have stuff here we could use, simple stuff we can use to create situations where the import of the fertilizers could be abandoned, literally. And we could grow the same amount of food with things like compost. I have proven this here on my farm, where because there's the idea of you cannot commercialize organic farming, but then the forest is not commercialized. I say this to say the way the forest grows is not a commercial state. It grows in a biodiverse state. So you could grow the abundance. You just have to grow it within the the uh, the natural flow of things, and then it becomes abundant because nature then does it. Once you grow within nature, nature amplifies what you do. I think that's the best way to put it. Once you grow within nature's frequency or alignment, nature actually amplifies what happens naturally because it's in alignment with what's happening. But if it's not in alignment, it cannot create the abundance.
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you what it looks like to work with nature rather than trying to dominate it. How do you see that showing up?
Well, you've been to my garden. So I would say this. When you look at the beds that are heavily intercropped and I let work just naturally, there's sometimes there's some space I haven't fertilized for a year, Zoe. I haven't put no manure because the plants that are being planted there, this creates the biodiversity in the soil, and I maintain that. I maintain the microbes. I keep feeding them because the idea we have an idea of we need to feed the plants. No, we need to feed the soil, and the soil feed the plants. Once the soil is what we call fat, in our fat meaning packed with nutrients. Once it grows, and here in Grenada, I've seen it grows almost anything here. So my how I prepare my beds and stuff is I create the environment, then I plant. I think when you do it that way, we get better yields. We get longer lasting plants. I have some cucumbers. I've been picking from them almost a month now. That's why the cucumbers you came and saw that has been there. I'm picking, harvesting for almost just continuous because usually cucumbers stay about 2 weeks and they start dying down. Most people cucumbers. That's because they run it through the cycle fast. It's taking its time, so it's going through the cycle as it should, right? So I'm picking every day. I can go outside in that plot of cucumbers and get almost a quarter to a half bucket every day.
And
That's because
remind us, how much land do you have?
um we have about 2 acres up here, but I farm maybe just a quarter, a little over a quarter of an acre.
Wow, fantastic. And so I think that's one of the things that's really interesting is that when it comes to people growing food, I've had people say, oh, you shouldn't look at Grenada, you should look at Brazil and Guyana where you can get like 100 acres for. I'm like, who's got time to farm 100 acres? Like, yeah, that's one way, but there's a lot that can be done on a small patch. And I'm actually working on a book that is about growing essentially food sovereignty. What does it look like to be able to provide for your family on a small plot of land? I'm looking at about half an acre because that's what I got up in St. Patrick's. But I think the lived experience that you've had of like trial and error, the passion that you have for farming and cooking is like a real resource that I'm honored to be able to promote to other people because I feel it's not just people looking to come from overseas. There's people in Grenada who need the knowledge that you have. And what's funny is that when I messaged you about it, you were like, funnily enough, Zoe, I was just sketching out the night before how to make it happen. So do you want to talk us through why you felt called to share your knowledge with people in this way?
I've been popular in Grenada based on my entertainment and what I used to do before. I think examples are important, very important. Um, and I see myself as an example of change and showing people that it can be done. Because there's when some people make changes, you might hear this saying, if I can do it, anybody can, based on where they came from. And so this is how I feel about this. Is that I have this information here, and you know what, I've made change to my life, and it has brought me to such peaceful states, tranquil states, and a healthier space mentally, physically, emotionally. Um, I can be I don't have to talk about the change because I'm being the change. And yeah, that is a drive, serious drive for me to give people and show people that listen, it can happen, and using all the knowledge and the wisdom I have to figure out how I can do this in our agriculture sector, in securing our food, and giving people strength to know that listen, we can take care of ourselves. We just need to focus more on ourselves, and not be so distracted by other things and other people. But yeah, I me just be showing, just setting an example, Zoe, and being the change and not talking about it. It's I used to be on Facebook and stuff in the early, as a heavy social media person, like back in the 2010s and stuff like that, when Facebook was like coming in heavy. And Facebook was what I used to use for marketing for most of my events, in to be honest, in the early. So that was my thing. So it's heavy on social media, and like I felt like I talked too much on social media about these problems. Like it's just the inequality of life and different things. I've So I just want to, like I say, be that full change and show it, live it. Because I've seen and heard a lot of it. So, I want to give people that life experience, that real knowledge, give people the life hacks so that the errors I made within the space, they don't have to. Yes, I know some things we have to go through, but I do believe as well some things we could watch and reserve and learn, and don't and not make the same mistakes. I'll take the life hacks. Sometimes you say, if we listen to your parents growing up, we say that a lot. So even understanding that is like, all right, how do we not say that anymore? How do we get others to accept these hacks and deal with what they have to deal with? It's like even dealing with our kids, I think, and I'm not knocking our parents. Some of our parents, I think, felt like we need to go through what they went through to develop that strength and fortitude. And I don't think so. I think that they needed to give us that wisdom so that we don't go down that road, because we would have our same problems or situations we have to face. So yeah, give people the hack. So like I said, they don't have to traverse. I think that's what society builds. There's a song by Junior Marley, and in I'm trying to remember the exact name of the song, but the line in the song is, we keep repeating the same mistakes of our ancestry. And I'm like, why? For real, like, I mean, you look back within our history, just in our recent history, it's a lot of repetition of the same errors. over and over again. So I don't want to be that, and I realize that I have to embrace the change and be who I am today. And not hopefully, I know by me doing this, it helps, it inspires, it uplifts, and I want my community to feel and see that. I
Yeah.
hope that
No,
answers. And I
no,
know it's
exactly.
long-winded, but
No, no, no. It's really powerful. And I think what I'm loving about this stage of being in Grenada is identifying the people who are all about solutions. Like there's a lot that's not working in the world. There's a lot that's really problematic, but I think the time of sitting around talking about it has long passed, and what's needed is solutions and people who are willing to pull
fact.
up their sleeves and do, and also not to do it in like, well, this is me. I'm just taking care of me on my own. It's like, no, I have this knowledge. I'm going to share it so that we can all benefit. Because if time comes and you're the only person with foods, you're not going to be in a particularly safe position. Whereas if all of your community can eat, you're good.
That is,
So
listen,
long-term thinking is really, really
Zoe,
important.
Zoe, that is a very, you make that point, and that is a very interesting point you make, because it's true. If if nobody, I'm I'm a farmer. I'm 39. I'll be 40 soon. Wow. Um, every meeting I go to, I'm the youngest person there. Every agriculture farming meeting I go to, I'm the youngest person there. Everything I see within us, that is the most scariest situation within our sector for me. Reason being, who's going to farm in 20 years? That so I'm figuring out solutions to that still, because I think that is something that needs to be addressed ASAP. Um, how do we involve young people into our agriculture sector and get them excited about growing food again? Really, yeah. Because again, if I'm 40 and I'm the youngest person in a meeting at this moment, yeah, there are one or two young farmers, but there isn't nobody to take up the mantle. Um, our elders, again, and I'm not knocking them. I love them dearly, but I'm accountable for my mistakes. I'm gonna just call it like I see it. I think they the error they made was saying that we're working the land hard, so you don't have to go and work the land. I think that really shifted a lot of youths away from farming. And then you have also the idea of farmers here in Grenada. I think it's a worldwide situation where I don't think farmers get the respect due from society, and the kids see that. The kids don't want to be in a career where they feel disrespected. They feel like they're under someone's feet, and farming is being treated like that. You know, yeah.
Yeah. And so I might be alarmist, and please tell me if I am, but my perspective is also like looking at what's happening globally with transportation costs and the ability to grow and the El Nino weather system that's happening. Like conversations with regards to food and agriculture. I feel that there's a certain point where we might not be able to say, how does it look? But can I actually eat? Because again, if you're if you don't have anything to pick from your garden, how it looks is not really the issue. Like people taking ownership, taking more responsibility of their personal security, their family security when it comes to being able to eat healthy foods, and forgetting the idea that we need to wait for the government to come up with a strategy to X, Y, and Z. Unlike in the UK, where it's freezing cold and horrible, yeah, we have sunshine. We have many people have access, if not land to themselves, to family. You have land and you have volcanic soils. So I'm calling myself out when I go to the market and I don't find what I want. I can actually grow it. There's really no excuse. And so again, I feel people like you who show that it can be done, regardless of whether you want to call yourself a farmer or not. If you're someone who likes to be able to eat food, being able to grow food is a really smart investment in your future. I would say.
It's the best. Because food is energy. You know, we talk about energy and what the war in the Middle East, and yeah, you disrupt that fuel energy. But what about the energy for the body? Um, that is very important. And yeah, we need to. You make a very good point of taking more ownership and accountability of our own health and how we feed ourselves and not just wait on Marcus to grow some food and you could get from or you know what I mean because I wish I could grow food to feed the entire nation, but it's not impossible, but at this point it's improbable. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean we cannot all grow food together and supply the nation. Yes, everybody is going through some type of hardship around the world, and yes, cost of living is rising around the world, and this is pricey and this is pricey. But again, I think just leaving it in the hands of what's happening in the world also too is an excuse because we can do something to help reduce our own cost of living here on the island.
1,000%.
But if 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 we don't see it as a we again things like this we see it as a problem for the government to solve, and you make a good point, we don't need to wait on them. You know what I mean? And again, history has shown us this. Governments, politicians, I mean, they do they they do the they do the least and like expect the most. You know, so we can't rely on them. We know this. We need to rely on ourselves. It's very important that we do. That's why community is so important. In in my perfect world, Zoe, I would have a community around me, someone who builds, have a few doctors around me, have to me just all the necessary things in society to make sure that we can secure ourselves as a community going forward.
I think that's a really valid point that you make about community and getting rid of the idea that everyone can do this on their own. Um, it definitely feels like an all hands on deck kind of approach. Even when it comes to like thinking about my land, there's no way that I can clear it on my own. So to be able to call on people is handy, but then also to understand that that's a responsibility for you. Like, how do you show up? And I think that bringing back what it means to really be in relationship with people, what it means to exchange, what it means to offer value as well as to expect that from people. That to me feels like a way in which we can draw on the way in which the old folks did it. They didn't necessarily all like each other, you know. I'm sure they had
No,
their issues, but
that's a great point you just made. That's a powerful point you just made. I love, we hear about communities and stuff in the past, and you know what, that's a powerful point, Zoe, because even me, that had have my brain walking too, because a lot of these elders, they weren't friends. They weren't cool with each other. Miss Mavis and Auntie Jojo wasn't good, but guess what? They come together to make sure the community had food. Because all how they had to cuss each other. They need energy to cuss.
yes.
You know what I mean? So that's a very, very good point. I think sometimes we feel like I had to like you to work with you. No. If our goal is the same, how I feel about you doesn't change the outcome of what we're doing here. That's how you're right. That's how they dealt with it, and yeah, that's how we should. You know, I hate hearing people say, I want to I grown up maturing different from where I grew up," because I really truly feel that is a statement that has broken down our society. Because a lot of our values and morals was not passed down because I don't want to raise maturing the way I was raised. And I hear my generation say that a lot, and it hurts because I know that they don't understand that they are taking away a lot of morals, values, and um passed down generational or less values. Let me use that word to um to our children. they don't know things. They don't know, and it's sad because within our society, I see how that has been reflected.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of dysfunction, which I think we can call out, but at the same time, there's a lot of wisdom and being able to discern between the two and not getting rid of everything because that's old time
Fact,
view is really, really important. And I
fact,
think it's also one of the things that I share with people who are looking to move because I think in the UK and the US, it's very individualistic. You think of your like you as your own or your family unit on your own. Um, and I have a lot of people saying, yeah, I kind of just prefer to keep to myself and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, that's all well and good where you're coming from. But in Grenada, where you don't know anything, you're going to need people. There's
hmm
going to be a time where you can't figure something out, or you're going to need someone to lend you this, you're going to need advice from this person. But what have you given? Because if you were just there keeping to yourself and then expecting that someone's going to come and save you, it doesn't really work like that. So
Let me break it
understanding
down
that
further.
actually thinking in a communal way, thinking about exchange and reciprocity is really, really important. Um,
Very,
and it's lovely to see that you're thinking about that from a farming perspective. Because even if you look at nature, like your peas are getting something from your calendula, which is giving something to your cucumbers. Like it's
yeah.
all about that symbiotic relationship. It's
No,
not it's not rocket science.
no, it's not. It's connection. It's looking aside and see what happens and see. I mean, we people ask looks for examples and things to look people to look up to and stuff like that. I was telling a sister that is like, look to nature. I was like, yeah, I like just look how nature deals with stuff. And I can guarantee you, if you're going through 5 things daily, you could watch, you could look around right where you're sitting down and nature and see a solution to your problem within nature right there and there. It I again it's uh, being open to unlearning,
Mm.
being
Yeah.
open to saying, boy, all right, as there's a saying also too that not because everyone says it's saying the same thing that means it's right, and I think there's a lot of that we need to work through because a lot of things we have we learned that this is how it is, and it's then we live life and we realize it's not.
Yeah. And not that anything needs to be legitimized at all, but what's your degree is in what? Business administration or something like that? What did you study?
I said the business.
Right. Yeah. So
uh yeah,
it's not like you were born on a farm and had no choice but to
fact,
farm. You had
fact.
the option to do something else, and seeing what it is living in the US, you're still choosing to do that. So it's not like this was your only path.
No, no, it wasn't, but um I I think life really nudged me into this pathway in some very cute ways, and I appreciate that. And I'm here now, and my thing is foot on gas, and it's about action. I think you know I get sometimes there's always in these little conversations up. As a telling a politician is that it is like, listen, you could do all this. Every go in every community, sit down. Guess what? The same problem it was 10 years ago is the same problem it is today.
Yeah.
We all know this. So all that energy you're wasting to go and talk, take all that energy and solve the problem. Put into solve the problem. Just like let's try that for a change.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Because yeah, because then it's we're doing we're crazy. We're being insane because we're doing the same thing every day or every time and expecting magically some type of different results when life has shown us it doesn't happen like that. We need to, if we know better, we need to do better.
Yes.
Um, I think that's how we live life. If yesterday you made an error and you could clean it up for today, clean it up so that that won't happen again so energy is not wasted there, you know. And energy, you don't, or energy is not directed into something that can make you angry, or make you sad, or make you feel stressed out. um we have to figure out how to solve and not just complain.
1000%. And you know, one of the things that I think is so interesting is how a nation, actually, no, let me not say a nation, is how a people who are disaffected become incredibly easy to manipulate. Because if you've just given up, you're not going to fight. You're not really going to expect anything. Whereas I think what you're
Facts.
doing is really revolutionary, not in a sense of overthrowing, but really empowering people to take control of their own lives and to be less dependent. So, yeah, we all know what's not working, but in growing your own food, that's really
We know
taking,
that works.
yeah, okay.
You're right. I mean, because if you, so let's use up one of these fine bags, right? If you grow potato in that, right, you could get about 40 pounds of potato. Listen to this very carefully. As a family of four, you have 40 pounds of sweet potato that you have in a bag. You don't have to weed, you don't have to manure. All you have to do is wet this. All you have to do is wet. Make sure it's wet for the first month. And after that, sweet potato takes on a life of its own. So that's minimum effort. All right. I'm saying with minimum effort in a bag of sweet potato, you could get 40 pounds of sweet potato. You could do the same thing with carrots, beets. That's one, two, three. Let's say you have five, you could do 5 different bags. Carrot, beet, sweet potato, dasheen.
Mhm.
What other underground crop I'm thinking about? Beet. And have these 5 bags. And after you harvest all of them, have about almost 5 months of underground of provision with what I just, for a family of four. 5 bags.
Yeah.
That's minimum. You don't have to dig no soil. You don't have to. It works. It could happen. I think our mindset is very crucial to how we see things. And if we sit on thinking, boy, Marcus is a farmer, Marcus grew from, and the reason why I'm using that too, because I think a lot of people just is like, all right, the farmers how to grow it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's also the reality of our environment right now. We don't have farmers. We're saying that young people want to go into farming. Okay, so we know all this. What are we really doing about it? Next week you come on, or next week you go on Facebook, keyboard warriors. Them young people who want to farm. Next week, the week after, food import bills high. The week after, you know what I mean? Okay, like and then there isn't. The sad thing about it is we know the age of our farmers, and there isn't real support for these people.
Yes. Yeah. And I
It's
think there's like systemic solutions and also personal agency as well. And I think another factor when you're talking about the growing root crops in bags is also recognizing that we are now in the hurricane season or approaching hurricane season. And the issue of what happens uh if supplies are affected, if you don't have electricity, if you can't get to the supermarket, to be able to have months of supply of root crops is not a bad thing. And even if, say, like happened with Beryl, that Samaritan's Purse or whoever is able to come with food supplies, an issue that we often have in which agencies are now actually pushing back against is that a lot of the food that's sent is like on the verge of being off, if not off anyhow.
Mhm.
So you're living potentially in a post-hurricane situation where things are not optimal and you're eating substandard food on an island where you could have grown what you needed and have it preserved. Like even that, there are things that you can do to just make
I
life
mean,
manageable for yourself.
we had Beryl when 2 years ago, right? And this is just me. So let's say I was a minister of agriculture. right after, and we went through Beryl, or we know we went through Ivan, went through Beryl. You're telling me that I haven't yet developed a a national relief plan for if a hurricane happens. All right, how much food do I really need to have securely wise of, or should I be growing or have in the ground consistently to make sure that if a hurricane hits, listen, I could I could give every family, even though it's one sweet potato, I could give everybody in the nation one sweet potato, a hana banana. You understand what I'm saying? This is, I think, the way we need to start figuring out things going forward. And I'm like, these are things I inquire about. How is there not a plan set for that? Saying, all right, boy, not we're making sure in this area here we're we're hiring, let's say for the next 6 months, X amount of men. Listen, we need to make sure and put on X amount of dashing, X amount of Tanya. And this is general, yes, it's for things like, let's say, the hospital, the homes, our schools, but also it is our backup for when, just in case a hurricane hits. We need to have these type of stuff in place. It to me is not, it's not rocket science. We
Yeah.
go through a hurricane. Okay, how how do we prepare for this? We have to invest in food. There really hasn't been no sorts of investments in food fr- from our powers to be to really, buffer ourselves for the hurricane season, or even move the needle of where our food security is.
Yeah.
We're still importing. Okay. You know, I remember after Ivan, about 3 years after Ivan, when I came back, there's like, I'm telling, there's food security, and it's like, I remember the same was importing 65%. I was like, whoa, that's so much. Da-da-da. We want 80. That, again, as much as a farmer, this is how I see things. I've seen, and I've seen this where with governments across the board, um, over the last years. When the government wants to change something, they implement a policy and it's done. I've seen, for example, this last government, they came into power, they wanted higher salaries. Yo, within a few weeks, that was done. You cannot tell me that same stroke of a pen initiative can't work with other things. Now, something simple as the hotels on the island, they import, and I understand because they can't get consistency. How do you create that with the same stroke of a pen? Because if farmers are not don't feel secure about a market, so if I'm not secure about a market, why would I go and grow thousands of pounds or something if I know I'm not going to get it sold?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. But if I know, listen, boy, there's a market there. Not only is a market there, this market secure. This market is putting on a deposit to secure their produce. We have never had that type of situation for farmers. But guess what? That's how big farmers operate. If you want to if as a consumer, you want to make sure you get your product, you you as a wholesaler, you pay for your product in advance so that you secure that harvest. This is how it works. So even when just implementing something like that, at simple parts like that, listen, hotels you have to buy from local, but what you need to do, if you find a local farmer, you need to invest into that farmer so that he can provide what you need. By a stroke of a pen, that could happen, and every hotel here in Grenada have to apply that, and that drastically changes everything that happens here in farming, Zoe. Just that simple policy change. You don't have to change nothing else. You change that, it drastically changes farming here, because then you know a farmer saying, boy, watching especially them young farmers, boy, they may need 10,000 pound watermelon. They already give me $25,000 to secure that plot. Trust me, you gain that watermelon and more. I could guarantee, but there isn't that. And listen, these hotels could do that because they have the capital to make sure they secure. If they could import it, they have the capital to secure it.
Very true.
So again, the my thing is, so when I hear people talk about, yes, things can happen overnight, because if you can increase your salary overnight, you could increase a farmer's salary as well overnight, because then you're forcing your establishments here to work with what is here. Fine, or they have 3 more months of importation, because the most short crops happens within a 90-day phase cycle. So you tell these hotels and them, listen, for the next quarter, you have to, this is what happens. So let's say the next quarter starts in, so you'll get them up, next quarter will start in the season, next season is September, because June right on the corner. So from fall, you need to figure out, you all need to find these local farmers, because there are many, and figure out how, and then again, if the government wanted even have a more organized situation, you do another policy letting farmers know, in order to lock in with these hotels, you need to have a cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you are forcing good things to happen based on the policies you create. That is not rocket science. I don't even ask you to change. I don't ask you to do not. All I ask you to, like they say, with a stroke of a pen, change the environment of which your business is happening. That is it. Well, that is my little 2 cents. But who am I?
Oh, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. We need to have these conversations on a monthly basis on your land, on my land, and elsewhere. And I love the wisdom and the passion. And I genuinely hope you don't get into politics, Marcus. If I do, I'll be very
No,
disappointed. But
I don't want to be into politics. You know
wonderful.
what? I would love to just advise.
Yes.
But again, to me, that is part of my civic duty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a farmer, and I feel like I want to help my country move forward. There should be space in that. There should be space within the not political field I want to use. There's space in the government, the governance body, whereby someone like me, we could have a serious discussion and say, listen, this is something we need. Perfect example, Zoe. I was talking, because this situation here with young men is to me is becoming a dire one. Young people are crying out for help. They are literally, like, we are seeing it by the behaviors. Everybody's just talking about it. How do you think they are feeling? You know, sometimes you just watch things, how when you was a kid, and you complain about something, but you didn't know what to say, but everybody keep talking about, and they belittle. How are you just feeling like shit, because as a kid you're not feeling empowered to talk. These kids are feeling like watching them. This story stuck with me. I work with a school somewhere in Birch Grove, and this kid once told me, Marcus, you know, I don't want to be a farmer because of the way they was handling my mother and treat her. These kids are seeing. So we need to help shape these youth minds. And again, I'll say by a stroke of a pen, things could happen. There are no mentorships for youths. I shouldn't say there are, because I've heard there are one or two, but these programs they need to be pressed on now. If we so worry about youths, why are we having community meetings to figure out how, as a community, we can help the youths do better? We just keep, but we are not making no efforts to help them. It's like we expect the youth just to snap out and help themselves. Obviously, it's something we're not holding ourselves accountable as adults, because we created this environment to fucking flourish. Excuse my French. We have created this environment to flourish. We that create that environment, not the youths. We that feed in the youths, not them. So we have created an environment for this to happen. The environment is not created by the youths. No, we created the situation. So how are we helping to solve it? I think I posted something the other day on Facebook, because I was saying, like, where are the church people, the mentors? Why are we not having emergency community meetings? Because we're facing an emergency situation. Why is that not a priority? Where are the priorities? How is that not all right, let's put everything on pause right now because we are dealing with us. We are you are our future is being jeopardized right now. How are we fixing that? We are more important. We are more caught up in a lot of other bullshit. I show speed and everybody and all this other fuckery that happening. But the youth are crying out. They are.
Yeah, I'm glad you say it because we've had the conversation before that there's certain things that I'm not supposed to say because of my accent and I should know my place and shut up. But yeah, as someone, my background is in international development, particularly looking at how violence and conflict arises. And I think one of the things that is always in my mind is that Trinidad was once a really lovely place, a very lovely tropical island, and many other islands that also have issues to do with crime and violence. That didn't happen overnight. And as much as people love to say, oh, not my beautiful Grenada, there are things happening here that do really need attention that aren't going to go away in and of themselves. And if left alone, will just fester. And as much as people love the idea of Grenada being a safe and beautiful place, which relatively speaking it is, that safety needs to be invested in and future generations need to be invested in. And I think sometimes the performative conversation or the idea is protected more than the actual reality of what needs to change. So yeah, it's great to hear you speaking on that. I'm sure some people might not like it, but to me, it's just reality. It's delusional to think otherwise.
That's and that word you just used, Zoe. Oh gosh. I mean, I know we could go, but we are too delusional. We are way too delusional, and and I think it's an escape mentality that we here in the islands. I think we deal with a lot of things with a smile. That's the escape. We don't deal with stuff. Perfect example. For years, we know, and again, I hope this, but I hope this isn't a channel. But for years, we know the Catholic Church super stuff under the rug. I'm saying this to say that we never stopped it, and it got worse. And years it got worse. To I think last year the entire Catholic Church they had paid how much $1 million in how it's called when you had to pay back the victims
Yeah, compensation. Yeah.
compensation.
Mhm.
And I'm like, the reason why I'm using that is because we're quote unquote a Catholic, and we do the same thing here. And it's a nasty habit where because we want to keep face, is something we see our parents and do grow up, because guess what, they were we don't deal with it. Like, people come over and let's say I remember happening, like, shh, it's like, this kind of people that's deal with shit in the home too, you understand? And I'm not saying argue in front of them, but just make it seem like the life is so perfect, and it's not. We're not living perfect lives. Like you
Yes.
say, yes, you're on the island. It's a beautiful island, and yes, you want to keep pristine and things, but there are a lot of things happening here, and it's not nothing. And I'm nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new happening here. What it is now is that just like a lot of things are more exposed, and we can't hide a lot of things like we used to hide shit before, which is great. But at the same time, too, people have to. It's out there. Stop trying to act like if it does not. It's not happening. Like, they're really out of touch with reality,
Yes.
and it's sad. It's
Yeah.
sad.
And I think
You
one
know?
of the things as well, when I say please don't go into politics, and when you talk about the wisdom that you want to be able to share, I think that is democracy. Like you as a farmer talking about how as a citizen more support is needed and how that would be better for the general populace. That is part of the democratic exchange. It's not just about turning up every 4 or 5 years and voting on election. Democracy really is the relationship between those who are governed and those doing the government, like every single day, every single week, every single month. So to speak out and say, actually, there's ways in which things could be done better. To me, that's just you being a responsible citizen. At times, it seems as if people speaking out is seen as being a traitor or being political or rocking the boat, which I'm still trying to get my head around. But if we want things to change, if we recognize that there is room for improvement, acknowledging that as a starting point and then figuring out, okay, what do we do on an individual level, on a household level, community level, parish, nation level? That's the only way that things are going to change. In my mind, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
But nah, because I mean, you have to impact it where you see nip it in the bud. So you can't. We've been patching out. We just patch here, put a patch here. Is a problem? Put a patch there. You know, instead of all right, boy, put a solution that could just last. So we didn't have to go through that next year, or the year after, or the year after that. Like, and again, yes, I know we live in a capitalist system, and this is almost worldwide. And yes, there are certain companies that really make it hard for movements of certain goods and services to happen in such a fair way, you know. But at the same time, too, history to me is the greatest teacher. What we have seen, fighting the system, to me, the system breeds off a chaos. So fighting the system is doing exactly what the system wants. We
Yes.
have watched everybody fight the system, Zoe. I think the system also, try to squeeze out creativity, you know, and that's why creativity is so powerful because it's not about fighting the system. I truly feel it's just about creating a system, not even to rival with it, but that works. For
1000%.
example, bartering. I man, a few people right now we barter. I have people who have stores and they buy produce from me. When I go buy them, I just take what I need and they take my produce. It works. And it's just me taking a system that I've seen work alongside this capitalist system that had made make life easier for people. So we have incorporated that within our business model. And this is to do business. So and it works. These are things, I mean, that could work. We choose comfort and convenience over growth constantly.
Mm.
And then we wonder, I mean, it's sad, but how these kids are moving the way are used because all these kids are seen as dollar signs. These kids have no values or, they're not, all right, boy, not. Let me be a good person. So again, and I think that's all because all they seen is the mommy and daddy on this money trip.
Yeah.
They're not seeing nothing else. All they seeing, boy, we had to make this buck. Everything surrounds making that. How do we make this buck? So again, yes, we as adults in this space, in this time, we have a serious role because I think we left the analog age and we got into digital. We were the transit between that. There's no other generation that went through that. Or at the 30 to 45 or 30, yeah, that took me 30 to 50, that group here. We went through analog, that analog digital, and I think that is very powerful for the way our world is shaping right now. Yeah, we could choose how we want our world to shape. I mean, what you're doing here with Exodus Collection, Zoe, I really happy that you're championing this. Reason being is because this is a community that is being built organically, but also too, it's being built with so many different minds. But I think the majority of mind goals within the group is the same. How do we have a community where we all can support each other? I know I think everybody's trying to work it out from their own space and their own perspective, and which is great, and which we need. And like you said, we need more collective conversations with action.
Action, 1000%. Because that's what I love about
Because
it. Because it's easy to sit around in the rum shop or whatever and talk about what's wrong and still do exactly the same thing. Whereas
same
I know
thing.
I come to your land, I can see, okay, Marcus doesn't just talk, he lives it. I can tell
Yeah.
Marcus isn't eating cheeseburgers every day. He's living it. and all the rest. And I think, yeah, the times that we're in, we need we need that. And also, sometimes it can feel like you're swimming against the tide by trying to be
Yes,
solution focused or trying to do things in a different way to everyone says you should. So it's really important to be able to connect with like-minded people so that you can co-create together. So as much as you thank me, I thank you because yeah, you offer a lot of value and wisdom to me. So I'm very grateful.
gratitude,
It
gratitude.
was supposed to be a short chat, and
I know, right?
over an
Because
hour in, we barely scratched the surface. So we're gonna
you
have to
know
call it
why?
here.
You know why? Because I think this interview is maybe almost a year overdue,
Hmm.
and I think it is what you do with your journalism is great because I think the information you expose is not the perspective of most, but also is needed. It's needed information so that people could traverse through, what you're helping them with, moving from such a space of hustle and bustle, busy, busy, busy to, all right, when I say ground zero, just kind of, you can just slow all the way down when you get here. But also to, I mean, yes, there are some nuances that you have to traverse through, but yeah, you have to slow down, and you helping them with that pace adjustment is crucial. So I mean, that is another thing I really, I'm glad they championing because I haven't seen someone nobody else champion things like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think I tried to be honest. The worst thing would be like, yeah, come to Grenada, it's beautiful, and then you say Grenada and Bronx you. It's a
Yeah,
process. And I think also
it
after
is.
5 years of being here, really what I'm most passionate about is this island. Is this island where I've come from 7 generations and understanding what does it really look like to invest here with humility, understanding that there's a lot that I don't understand. But when I find people like you who are clearly putting in the work, my first thing is, okay, what can I do to contribute? How can I make sure Marcus's brilliance is recognized by other people on the island or people from elsewhere? Because yeah, people doing the work are few and far between. So I feel like anything I can do to shine a light and amplify that work is, yeah, that's part of why I'm here. So thank you, cuz.
No problem, cuz I got you. It's a family, family. So I think even within our space too, it makes sense. We're family and we're showing the energy of collaboration. And it also shows, they say keep it in family. When you're doing businesses, it's interesting. I think in our space, in our Caribbean space, there's still people don't hire family members to work in your business.
Okay.
It's a kind yeah, because it's like family just kind of screw you over. This this kind of feeling that family kind of screws you over. But I think it's a screwed mentality, because I think that that's who you need to have in your business. I think your family and you just say, oh, don't hire friends in your business. Again, I don't. If I hire you as my friend, if you have a business, I hire you as my friend. I truly feel that if you're my friend, that bit what you the problems I see people have with their friends and it become a trust issue and stuff like that. That means then obviously your friendship was based on something very fragile. Because if we're, for example, on the farm and I say, Zoe, come on, manage me. I want to hire as my farm manager, right? And because you're my family, I guess you don't feel like you have to put. Let's use that word. You don't put all in, but then you don't care for me.
Mhm.
That because then if I don't you don't value me as your family member. That's how I see it. Because if you really value me as a friend, then you make sure what we're doing here is a success. And what I'm saying, I've seen how that have worked in both ways, where I've seen the successful route and I've seen the unsuccessful route with family and friends. And I'm like, all right, obviously, and then most times what you see is it's a trust issue. So it brings me to, like, I wonder how many people are actually friends,
Yes.
and how much people are who say they're about family actually care about family. Because again, if that's the case, then there is a way to, because what we do is we show that we showing others and even our future that all right, boy, you can't work with family, you can't work with friends. I always have to be an outsider. But again, I understand because again, I've seen where an outsider showing more interest in what you do as a business than your family shows you how much you do as a business. And to me, I could be wrong, but I just truly feel that it just shows. And I know some people might feel aware about this, but how much they care about you, and it because again, I just could be wrong. If I care about you and you hire me, I'm making sure your business succeed.
Very true. And I can vouch for you on that. And to be honest, I have to confess that I'm still very British in that
Mhm.
what I care about, I don't know, I shouldn't say, but it's true. I care about more about efficiency than people's feelings. And so even though you happen to be my family, that's not why I work with you. I work with you because I think you're very good. And I'm going to share that you and I collaborated on an event at the start of this year where we were doing a trip to Sandy Island. And the day before the trip, you realized that you had the wrong date and you didn't have the food ready. Do you remember?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so, so many people in that situation would have been, oh, screw it. She hasn't paid me the money. She's on her own, or just totally mashed it up. But you delivered and you took it in your strides. And I feel like for me, you don't learn about people when they're in the best of situations. You learn how they are under pressure. And I think you
Facts.
handled that exceptionally well. So yeah, you happen to be my cousin, but I vouch for you because you're legit and you're professional and you show up and you care. So yeah, that's a big part of it
Gratitude,
too.
gratitude, gratitude. I appreciate that, Zozo. Yeah, we had to, we had to be professional about what we do. I mean, I'm not every everything I'm doing now. I feel like I should I'm blessed by nature and I'm certified by my ancestors. You know what I mean? Literally, so working off of that energy, everything I do have to honor them, and have to, support this ecosystem of life that we're in.
Yeah. We're very blessed and I look forward
Indeed.
to more.
Indeed.
So for those of us who want to come and hear Marcus talk more, come
I will.
come to the session next Sunday. And if you're in
Facts.
Grenada, our gardening sessions, we'll probably do another short little promo for it so people can find out more. But yeah, I'm super excited. Yeah, so I look forward to what's
Let's
next.
go. Let's give people some beautiful experiences here, man. Got
So
this.
for sure. All right, take care.
All right. Peace, peace.